Communication.
We talked about effective communication with everybody, and coaches and players and other officials and everything. That's really the goal.
Why?
Well, the goal, and what I said, my sense was either to get to the next play or to be successful in the game and getting through the game and things like that.
Okay, good. Travis.
That there's a cohesiveness between the group or even the coaches, right? Just puts everybody on the same page.
Okay, Brent.
We talked about it eliminates assumption.
So if it eliminates assumption, what are you sharing? Perspective and what else? Information. All right? And if you're unwilling or unable to share that information or that perspective, what occurs? Breakdown and chaos, absolutely. So, to me, the idea of, for me, officiating goes beyond the court, but the idea of having a connection. The people that I work with, my goal is to know and understand something about every single one of them. And that's why I started out with the three things. I mean, as goofy as an embarrassing moment. The idea of, we already talked about sending those clear and concise messages is unbelievably important, and it allows us to understand the messages. And it's hard. How many of you have a significant other? Who's the hardest person in the world to communicate with?
My wife.
Your wife. So, and Darling Delia is my favorite person in the entire world, and Darling Delia and I don't always communicate well, and that's when 43rd Avenue is crazy. And imagine when you are at CCU and Corey's screaming at you, to be able to carry a conversation with Corey, as well as your partners, the table, all of a sudden it's hard to do. And Randy's right. Randy goes and he talks about how communication is the most poorly evaluated component that we possess in the RMAC. That's why we're taking the time to do this. So with the components, who's responsible? Tell the person next to you, in communication, who's responsible? And so when we talk about that, we talk about integrity and thinking. I know that when Katie Gomez says something to me, I know that she has unmatched integrity. I know that Erin thinks before she speaks. And if we don't put those together as part of our ability to communicate, we're not successful. And what's an active listener look and sound like? Engaged. Well, okay, engaged is big. So what exactly do they look and sound like if they're active listeners? Eye contact's number one. What else?
Body language.
Body language. And Randy will talk about this. This is one of his least favorite things in the world. And the other thing that he hates is this. And so the idea of being an active listener, and my eye, Lisa's doing much better now. When I first looked at her, she was counting the holes in the ceiling tiles.
832.
Yeah, Kernow's practiced that a long time with me. So the idea of doing that is really important. Are you an active listener? And sometimes it's hard if my back's to a coach like this, but they know if I'm listening and shaking my head. They hear things rattle, but they know my head's shaking. And so the idea of, okay, now, this is a trick question. I'm going to tell you right now. When you officiate, are you listening to answer or listening to understand? Tell the person next to you. And I am going to trick you on this one, so talk to each other. Tammy's already smiling. All right, who's got a little guts? Who wants to take this one on? Casey, thanks for volunteering. That was awesome.
Well, I think
You need to be loud. Brandon's got bad ears. His Miracle Air, bad batteries. Go.
it's both for me listening to understand because it helps establish a better rapport.
Okay, so you create a relationship, trust, and confidence. If you're listening to understand. Absolutely, I agree. Anybody want to take it? Look at, she has Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. Peggy! Yeah, go, Peggy!
We should listen to understand, however, sometimes that don't always occur. And I was just sharing with Cliff if we have a coach that's always yapping, is not happy about every single call we make, and I don't know if we're talking about our partner, or if we're talking about just the game in general. For our partner, of course, we do listen to understand, but sometimes we may have partners that we just don't, we don't gel with.
Stop it!
You
That
know?
never
You probably
happens.
don't have to
No.
in Colorado.
I'm Colorado.
In Texas.
No, everybody has straight teeth and blonde hair. Yeah, yeah,
In
absolutely.
Texas, we have huge egos.
Oh, okay.
You may have someone that you just like, here we go again, you know, this person thinks they know it all. And you try to listen to understand, but in the back of your mind, you're just like, you know, same thing goes with coaches, but I know that we need to do that in order to diffuse a lot of situations.
So thanks to both of you, and I really appreciate that. And I agree, there are times where we need to listen to understand, because they're really, really upset. And there are times, and this will be my challenge to you, we're going to talk about being prepared and practicing. There are times where we're not listening, we don't listen, and we shouldn't listen. You just shake your head and say, yeah, I hear you. And so to me, there are times with coaches where we have to listen to have an answer. And I think sometimes we want to be touchy-feely, sing kumbaya, listen to every word they have to say. And there are times where, yeah, Cliff, I hear you, and you move on. Or, Coach, I'll watch for that. But there are times where, when they are truly have a legitimate thing, that we have to listen to answer. And there are other times that we have to listen to have an answer. So, listen to have an answer and listen to understand. So it's real important. And it takes lots and lots and lots of concentration and energy. And I need to be able to work with Peggy, because Peggy would grow quickly to dislike me, and it's really disappointing. But we need to have a relationship. I love those teeth. That is awesome. So the idea, there are three things in this that we're going to talk about and say. Verbal. The words we choose. What words are you comfortable with? What language do you use? Do you use the same language when you communicate with coaches as well as your partners? Don't know. The idea of tone, pitch, pace, and force. We're going to talk about gravitas in a second. But the idea of when you have passion, do you have passion? Don't know. What's your body language? What's your eye contact? What's your posture and proximity? Sometimes I get too close, and I know that. I got to be really aware of that. But the idea of, and we're going to talk about this, to be able to do all these things, you need to practice. And anybody who says that they don't practice, or they're not successful, or they don't have a lot of experiences. So, you're going to have to bear with me just for a second. So, we're going to talk about in a second something called gravitas. And it's going to talk about, you need to write down three things in your notes that put teeth in what you say.
Times that we say, I think, or I don't know, as opposed to sticking to maybe the facts of what we do know.
So choice of words. Outstanding. I really, really like it. Chad!
I like that you talked about be a leader and sound like one. Do you have a presence of you that they can come to you to make those decisions, to the crew chief, the importance of, what we're going to get that play right. I mean, just are you believable as a leader? I can walk on the floor and look like I'm a leader, but then I can just go, I don't know anything.
Okay, good. Mary!
We talked about the practicing having standard statements so that you could easily and not fumble on, as I'm doing right now.
Bryce!
We talked about the tone that you use the right tone for the right circumstance. If it's more empathy or something happened, or saying, hey, this is my line.
Okay, good. Tammy?
Do I seem pissed all the time?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
You stop it. Joy!
I think facial expressions are really important. Are you crinkling your eyes like, what are they talking about? Are you
Right.
confused? Are you...
So that's what you need to ask yourself. When you communicate with your partners, with everybody in this game, does your communication have teeth and create the trust and the confidence necessary to be successful? These work? Okay. Prior to a game, do you formulate a game plan prior to every game? And I think this is really important. And it's going to talk about communication. What's your role on the crew? And each of us has roles. And I don't care if it's Randy Campbell or John Hafley, or if it's Travis, or if it's Yolanda. Each of us has a role. And sometimes we have to assume the role of the crew chief. Sometimes we're that U2. But ultimately, we are a crew, and we need to understand what's going on. Partners, you go back to Peggy. Peggy hates John Hafley already, which is really disappointing, Peggy. You're killing me.
Killing me, Small.
That's right. So the idea of partners, do you know and do you understand how you need to communicate with your partners? Because if you're going to travel with them for 5, 6, 7 hours, you better have a means to be able to communicate and make the trip worthwhile. To me, the next one is, are you willing to take risks? When you're the U2, are you willing to go to Michaela Fox and say, I disagree with you? I mean, well, you know, and Michaela's she's young enough to be my daughter, but it took me a long time before I could say I don't agree with you, Michaela. Look at her laugh at me. So the idea of Randy doesn't want U2s. If you officiate like a U2 in this, don't plan on being picked up or moving forward. You need to be able to make yourself feel uncomfortable in all aspects of communication to be successful. What's the table? How do you interact with the table? Are they part of we, us, and ours? Haven't heard that one in a while, have you?
No, I have not.
So the idea, are we a team? Yeah. Coaches, this is really important. When you meet a coach for the first time, how do you interact with that woman or man? Because there are a couple of coaches that they've grabbed my hand and they don't know me, and they pull me as close as they can, and like they're just drawing the line in the sand right there. Does your handshake and does your presence convey, you know what, I respect you and we're going to get along, but we have to communicate tonight. The idea of talking about coaches in a pregame, you know, we'll talk about it, Michaela and I will talk about it, say, you know, so-and-so really disliked me last game, you know, you're going to have to help me if things go south, and we talk about that and we interact. And then in the game, and I will give you an example. There's a guy named Jack Jones, and some of you know Jack, and he's one of my favorite people in officiating. And I was working a game with him at the University of Utah, and Elaine, the coach at Utah, hated me. Literally hated me.
Still does.
Oh yeah, probably. It is great to have the peanut gallery over here. But, so what happens is, and I'm carrying on this conversation with Elaine, and all of a sudden, I feel this hand in my back, and it's Jack pushing me away. He says, I got this, John. And Jack pushed me away, and Jack took on Elaine for me, and I'm telling that story, and it's been 20 years ago. So the idea of in-game, and Jack knew that Elaine hated me, but Jack took care of me. And that goes back to my role on that crew. You know, the idea, we talked about the handshakes, and then this last one, do you have responses? If I'm carrying on a conversation with Tanya at Metro State before the game, it's a 0. And I'm just shaking hands and I'm smiling and I'm asking her about life and what's going on, how Christmas was, whatever. And then do I have the ability to take all those things and communicate with her, that trust component and confidence when she's a 10? And so that goes back to your role. Is your role to carry on that conversation with those coaches? I don't know. I can't answer that. But this is what you have to ask yourself. On that role, where do you communicate? Who do you communicate with? And what's your role? So then...
John.
What? Yolanda!
So you're saying when they're at a 10, how are you going to communicate with them? So at some point when they're a 10, can you communicate with them?
Probably not.
Right. So how do you find that middle ground? Because
you may not, Yolanda, or actually go.
You don't give up on that, John. You just keep going. And what I mean is that you may not be able to communicate with them now, but give it a couple plays. Let them come down a little bit. At some point in time, they're gonna need that communication with you. They're gonna need it. They don't need it at that point when they're at a 10, but at some point, they're gonna need that communication, and they're gonna come down to that 5 or 4, and you're gonna be able to talk to them.
And I'll tell you Tanya's story where she lost her mind with me, and it wasn't, well, she just lost her mind with us, and I said, I'll be back. You know, I make sure she's in her box, I'm talking to her, I said, I'll be back and we'll discuss this. And so, I'm real comfortable talking to him. And we're gonna talk about assuming our presence in tough situations in a second. But the idea of having that, with Tanya losing her mind with me, I consider that, and it's going to be right in this, and this is great timing, great question, is I consider that an opportunity to improve my communication. Because everybody does it differently in this league. And there was a new coach this last year, and Randy will be the first one to admit, the coach and I didn't get along very well. I tried, but it didn't work. And there were just times where I just walked away. I just said, yeah, I hear you, I'll watch it. And then I walked away. But there's other times I'll talk, but you need to know what fits you. It's really important. You need to know what fits you. Does that kind of answer that? Okay. So on this one, here's what I want you to do. This is going to be an opportunity. What do they mean by opportunity? I know. An opportunity to communicate. Yes. What do you think?
You have opportunities to learn, right? Every situation has to be learned. If you don't fail, right, or you don't try to learn, never get better.
So is it okay to fail?
Absolutely.
Okay. The key is how fast you get up. Okay. Another one, David.
Personally, I worked on it. When they get to a 10, I get that defensive mode right away. So it's really tough for me. I have to be really cognizant of making sure I don't elevate with them. I have to bring myself back down.
Great observation. Thank you for sharing. Tammy.
I think trial and error, so if it doesn't work, put it out of your pocket or throw it out. So you
But the key is what? I agree. What's the key? How do you need to look at these situations? What did he say? It's an opportunity, absolutely. So here's crisis situations. These are 4 you need to have. Do you act like you're in control? And ultimately, do you like it? And that sounds really perverse. I mean, it sounds really perverse. But when something goes in the soup, do you want to be the person who's in control of that situation? Do you have the gravitas to handle the situation when a coach has lost his or her mind? Do you have the skill set to carry on a conversation and make it a coherent one that allows you to at least a little bit get out of it? I can't answer that, but I mean, it's an opportunity. When you have this situation, this is a great time after the game to discuss it. And Randy's always very good about processing things like this if you have something go crazy. And it's always better to contact him prior to him contacting you. Yes?
You know, we always talk about you really can't referee above your level of experience. Crisis situations, as you have more experience, you can handle them. They're not all the same, but they're similar. There's
Correct.
similar things that happen, so that's, I think, when we talk about U2, U1 referee, you know, some U2s get in crisis situations, and that's where they learn how things happen. Sometimes they step in too deep, and sometimes they sit back and kind of watch how other people do it, but, you know, I think that's when Randy talks about ours is, when a crisis comes up, can you have all those executive presence, executive vocal to manage it? You might screw it up royally. You might screw it up royally, but you stepped in, took action, made a decision, rolled with it, and then we learned.
Okay, good. Robert first.
Yeah, and you have to look at it this way, because every one of those crisis situations gives you an opportunity. I call it the tool man belt. Every time you get in one of those crisis situations, you have an opportunity to add another tool to your tool belt. So if you're, just look at it this way, if you're a maintenance man and they call you to fix something, Are you better equipped to fix whatever problem's going on with 10 tools in your belt or one? Well, we all know the answer to that. And crisis situations are the same way. For those of you that don't know, I work in police work and the medical field as well. I deal with crisis on a daily basis. And the more of those situations you're in, the more comfortable you're going to get down the road. And I'm going to relate that to your camp while you're here for 3 days, because anybody can go out there, and Randy will tell you this as a supervisor, our supervisors that all of us in this room work for, Scott, Michaela, everybody, it's understanding that those crises are what build you. They're what give you experience. And when you're out here at camp, anybody can referee a camp game where the ball goes up, nothing happens, and the horn buzzes at the end. But I've been with officials, and, oh man, I hope we don't have any technical fouls, or I hope we don't have any layer plays or anything. Well, that's when we find out where those crisis people are, because those are the people that can step up. And it's not always going to be that same person. It may be that growing experience for somebody, and that's how you learn.
Right,
But those crises.
Doug, really quick,
Real
because
quick, just going off Robert's point there, you know, when a crisis happens, somebody's gotta be in charge. It's just that simple. And who's it gonna be? One of the phrases that I like to use is power perceived is power achieved. So if you don't even have a clue what's going on, as long as you know what you look like you're doing, they're probably gonna believe you, you know? And there's other ways to put it as well, but it works. And somebody needs to step up and be in charge and create that calmness.
so this is really important, and I'm afraid I need to be a little quicker than I would like right now, so I apologize. So some of the things that you need to keep in mind: do you have an open mindset? Are you willing to have the ability to learn? Can you affect everything from your verbal, paraverbal, nonverbal, and so with each one of these, so you may be asked to do things that are uncomfortable, and when you have this open mindset, you're like, yeah, Gator, I'll be more than glad to try that. Or Michaela, that's a good idea, and I'm going to try it. And it may not work for you, because ultimately, what's natural for you? I don't know. And everybody handles this communication piece differently. So think about, bless you, the idea of having an open mindset and being able to be educable is really, really important. So then, for us, a couple things we need to keep in mind. Do you prepare and practice? I make my wife crazy because I practice in a window at our house. And all of a sudden, she says, I hope the neighbors aren't watching you right now. And I talk to that, I talk to the window. And I practice that all the time. And do I prepare for it? Absolutely. Because Doug and Robert are correct. How are you perceived by those people? Are you willing to do that? How are you perceived by your partners? Do you practice what you say in your pregame? Are all your pregames the same, or do you vary it based on the people you're working with? Don't know. And this is really important. How are you perceived by others? Have you ever sat back and how are you perceived? Overly aggressive? Not open? Are you personable? Are you a good travel partner? That's one of the things Randy would say. Would you want to travel with that person to wrap the suit? So as you think about this, what do others say about you? Or do you have a friend? Do you have a friend that you're such good friends with that he or she can talk to you about how are you perceived? Because I can be wound a little tight, and I know that when I officiate.
A little?
I know, I make coffee nervous, but that's a joke. That's Randy's joke, so you better laugh a little louder. Okay, that's good.
We already did.
Yeah, and he used that one on me, and I wasn't even here. Golly. So the idea of how you are perceived by others is important. And to me, the next one, and this is actually one that I talk about a lot. When you walk away, what do people think about you? I love the way Erin, they think really nice things. Erin knitted her brows as soon as I said that. They say really nice things about you, Erin. Or do they say, John Hafley's a blankety blank blank blank. And so are you aware of this? Because my goal every day is to find out something about every person that I interact with. And that makes me really weird, and I know that. But when I walk away, I want them to say, he's an all right dude. And that's important. So how are you perceived by others? And what do they say when you walk away? When you communicate this. So it's the same thing with coaches. When you walk into the gym, do they kind of breathe a sigh of relief? Oh yeah, I'm gonna get a good game tonight. Or do they say, oh my God, it's gone in the soup? So I don't know. So here's what I need you to do in your notes. I need you to tell the person, come on, work, two things that, of all the things that I talked about today. Trust your partners, I like it. Casey.
Self-reflection.
Good. Are you able to hear in the back, Brandon? Right answer. Tell them.
Self-reflection.
Good. Robinson.
Having and building a rapport with my partners.
Okay, great. Rebecca. Listening. Yolanda.
Good communication on the court.
Okay, Bruce.
Smile.
It's hard for me to do that. But Andy.
Direct.
Direct. Dylan.
I listen.
Good. Jamie.
Confidence.
Confidence. Drake.
I'd say partnering.
Okay, Brandon.
Listener.
Listener. All right, good. Now, I'm sorry this is not working quite right. So, what are 2 areas you need to improve on? Tell the person next to you. What are 2 areas you need to improve on?
I need to be better about getting communication out there sooner.
Oh, thank you for being honest about that.
Wait, what does that mean, get it out there sooner?
So a lot of times when I've had a warning on a coach, it'll be 2, 3, 4 minutes before I let my crew know.
Okay.
Okay. Travis.
Responding to understand and to listen. So I respond to that.
All right. Tammy.
Smile more on the board.
Lisa.
Rating where a coach is at or misrating where they're at. If I tell them a joke and maybe it wasn't the appropriate time to tell them a joke.
Okay. Bruce.
Sorry, I was loving that one. Yeah, the area that I need to improve on is just those simple one-liners back to try to diffuse the situation.
Katie E. Gomez.
Letting go of kick calls, not letting a call I didn't like linger with me.
So ultimately, women and men, what I hope is during this camp that you can work on creating connections with your partners and coaches, and it's hard because you won't see these coaches probably again. But ultimately, if nothing else, create connection with your partners, trust and confidence. Thank you.